We have a great choice that we want to reward. So we have this great choice here, this great tunnel that's just been activated. We want to stick some excitement into that tunnel, stick some awesome into that tunnel. So the first thing we've got to do is say it was a great choice, acknowledge that it was a great choice. And the way that we do that is with something called a marker. Now, a marker is absolutely any stimulus, any event that is paired with a reward. And this could be a visual, couldn't it? It could be a verbal. So
we're trying to pinpoint that moment that we saw something that we liked. We're trying to make an event of that moment with our marker. So our marker just says that, hey, that was great. That was what we wanted.
So we've got visual, for example, thumbs up. We've got verbal, which might be a yes or a nice.
Cool.
And an auditory. Now, the difference between verbal and auditory is that auditory might not come from our mouths. It might be a beep, it might be a click. So those of you that are familiar or have heard of clicker training, this is where a clicker would come into it.
Something like the doorbell, Tom. Where does the doorbell fit in?
Well, that is interesting because that is an auditory trigger. And the funny thing is that inadvertently, remember 24/7 dog training, inadvertently we can create and reinforce behaviors just kind of by chance in our day-to-day life. So for example, let's say let's say that your dog jumps up on the sofa to look out of the window, and then the next thing, the doorbell rings, and the doorbell's already been paired with someone exciting entering the house, and all of a sudden your dog's jumping up on the sofa like, maybe I can get that doorbell to ring and get someone to come through it again.
And the most exciting thing is actually you really can select the marker. So actually, if you want to train that your doorbell means really just calmness and feed on a bed, actually it could potentially be turned around, could it not, to be another marker?
Absolutely. So you can step into existing frameworks with this. So the important thing is, and I'm going to pop that here, that the marker, whatever it might be, always is followed up with a reward, and that is whether you intended to do the marker or not. So for example, let's
accidentally click. Eliza's clicking away, clicking away, accidentally clicking with and we're with food there. You know what we're going to feed? We've
got to feed, because the power is not in this becoming an exciting event of its own. The power is in this being a very quick kind of like, yes, you got it. That tunnel is what I wanted, and it's going to be followed up with something.
How about if maybe I click once, Tom, and I feed, and then I click twice and then 3 times, and I don't maybe feed the next 2? Because a lot of people like to think about whether they could do that.
Yeah, absolutely. The key is that the marker should stay as kind of similar as it can do. So understandably, when we're using our voice, the way that we say yes or the way that we say nice might be slightly different every time, but the key is that one marker leads to one reward, and we never look to take away the reward from the marker.
We don't want to dilute that.
No, we don't. It's so powerful, it's so cool, and you'll see why. So the next stage of this is then thinking about what reward you actually want to follow up with. So what's your choice of reinforcer going to be?
So your choice of reinforcer, let's say a fantastic recall. So the dog came flat out at you, but not only a fantastic recall, they recalled from chasing a surfer. They recalled from chasing a deer. They recalled from chasing a jogger, I think that would be. So they recalled from chasing a jogger. As they were chasing that jogger, we gave them another game of chase. And they didn't necessarily get too far. They just went, oh, that looks nice, went that way, and then actually recalled when asked. So we give them chase as a reinforcement choice.
Now, this is powerful. Chase, what is chase? Chase is a behavior. We're reinforcing with behaviors, and that allows us some flexibility when we think about it in that way, which Lauren's going to show you.
So let's take our dogs that we want to keep in closer proximity. We're going to consider maybe whether toys could be one of those games, and it's playing with toys, specifically playing close. So playing close, another one of our reinforcer choices.
Now, all too often we get a little bit hung up on the object, and we get a little bit obsessed with food or toy they're your only options in rewarding. Actually, when we kind of take it away from it being about the toy and actually about the behavior, the interaction with that toy, the toys are just the vehicle for reinforcement. The toys are just the opportunity to create a great experience. So our favorite toys, like the Tug Enough Chaser tugs, like the Frisbees, they're toys that can be used in different ways. So they're toys that the dogs can do
a lot of flexibility.
Flexibility. So what we want you to do is kind of get rid of the idea of the object, although Tug Enough toys are pretty bright and colourful and look pretty cool, and actually think about how you implement and utilise that.
It's more about the event,
Yeah.
and it's more about what you can do with the toy than actually the toy itself. Let's take eating, Tom. So we're going to take eating as a reinforcer choice.
Yeah, absolutely. Eating, again, incredibly powerful. And the reason why we've said eating rather than food is because we can get a little bit obsessed with food, but actually eating is an event in itself, right? And sometimes we eat at a restaurant, sometimes we eat out of a pizza box, sometimes we eat and we cook it ourselves.
This sounds like our life.
It does. So with that, we've got to think about how we then implement the eating experience, and we're going to come on to that really soon.
How about scatter and search? So I think, what about if we add some scatter and search in there?
So this again is really interesting in that this is food, scatter feeding is food, and yet the reinforcer, the behavior they do is very, very different. So for example, eating is a quick, easily implementable reinforcer, food straight to mouth. Scatter feeding is going to take them a little bit longer. It's going to probably build more calmness into it. It's going to allow you as the trainer to get your act together and think, what are you going to do next? We use it for that as well.
Choice of your delivery is really very, very powerful. Last one, sniffing.
Yes.
Sniffing, last one. Why might sniffing be a great reinforcer choice?
Well, what do all of these behaviors have in common? They are all very valuable and desirable behaviors. So when we move away from thinking about the actual object being the reward and thinking about how behaviors have their value, behaviors are rewarding, all of a sudden you can use absolutely any behavior that your dog or your student's dog chooses over other ones to reinforce less desirable behaviors. It's that big. So sniffing, common problem, common struggle that people experience, choosing scents on the ground over them. And yet as soon as we start to think about it as an opportunity, as soon as we start to think about it as something to use in the toolkit, that turns a struggle into a strength. So next up, we've got delivery.
Now, delivery is one of these things that I think a lot of your owners possibly haven't even considered. They're so busy still trying to fumble, get the treats, and actually even remember to bring the treats with them, that actually they might not even consider how they actually deliver their, let's say, eating experience. So how they're actually thinking about delivering on that day, they might not have even considered it, and the likelihood is they haven't considered it without your input.
So this is taking an object, turning it into an event, as Lauren says. And with that, the way that you deliver will impact the subsequent excitement levels, the calmness levels. It will impact whether, like for example, as Lauren gave an example at the beginning, the chase, it will impact how well matched to the behavior and to the choice that was. So if they choose to call to you away from chasing a deer,
and you give them a piece of kibble and you drop it on the floor,
that would make for a sad dog.
Just not cutting it. So it really doesn't equal the behavior they just did. Whereas if they came off a deer and you are running in the other direction, squealing excitedly with a chaser tug, and as they go to get the chaser tug, you give them a quick miss and then they get to re-grab it, actually that is a powerful event because they kind of are on the hunt, they were considering hunting that way, and suddenly now you've given them another hunt. That's powerful.
So a little story on this one, because what we've gone through so far, you might think, gosh, this really, surely if you're reinforcing your dog, the dog should just be reinforced. Interesting. The study that was actually looking at something else that I did in 2000 and I'm going to say 12, don't know, but it did happen, was looking at dogs going to a specific location, sometimes being rewarded and sometimes not. And then we put locations in between those two. Now, if the dog expected to be rewarded and didn't get rewarded in that way, or the reward didn't happen, they had a disappointment effect. And that disappointment effect wasn't rewarding, it was punishing. So these choices are key, because if it doesn't match up with what the dog was expecting or the situation.
You might think that piece of food is a reward, and you might think that you were rewarding, you're like, he's coming back and I'm giving him food. But actually, not only are you not rewarding him, actively you are punishing him. And we know that your students will be experiencing this at times, maybe putting the dog on the lead at the end of a walk and giving them a biscuit, and actually that dog just thinks that is a really bad deal.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that, you've just punished the recall, you've stopped the recall from happening in the future. So the next point. Now,
placement is big. So let's say we want a dog to be closer to us, we'd like them to be hanging around a bit more, we'd like to know they were more frequently checking in, but what we're doing is every time they drop their ball at, I don't know, 20 meters away, we go and get their ball and then we throw it with one of those chuck it throwers, and we throw it another 50 meters away. So actively, what we're potentially doing with our placement of our awards, so our chuck it ball, let's have a ball, our chuck it ball is over here. So our chuck it ball's over here. Our dog is starting about here, and we are over here.
Oh my goodness.
And so it's a really nice dog. You did a great job. And we're here, so let's have us over in this direction. Here. And basically, that's us. I did my hair well this morning. And basically, if our dog's here with the ball and we throw it over there, what we're starting to do is teach our dogs peripherally hang around 50 meters away rather than actually hang about with us. Now, placement is something that's really under considered, actually where that reward is delivered.
Yeah, absolutely. Another example, just to really cement this in your brain, and that is boundary games. So again, let's revisit that. We've got the boundary right here, and we're placing the reward here, here, and you know what, the dog is just like, I love this place, I want to stay on this place, this is the best place in the world. And yet, if every time the dog steps onto the boundary, and we're trying to build duration and staying on the boundary, and we chuck a piece of kibble over here, we're not going to get the same effect. Our reinforcement strategy is not matching up to what we want to achieve, and that can make or break the success of boundary games.
So placement of your rewards, think about exactly what you're trying to reinforce. Think about how you're reinforcing, really, in the sense of, is it in position, or is it something I want moving? Or if say I want the dog to be coming to the bed with energy, placing the reward away from the bed is sensible, because then they can come back to the bed with energy. But if I want calm duration on the bed, it makes no sense for me to be flinging treats here, there and everywhere. So really, placement can really make the difference between success in a game or actually, unfortunately, not seeing such great results.